Hey everybody, and welcome to Notes from the Other Side. This is a podcast for people who love Jesus, but have some real concerns about Christianity. Here at Notes, we take a microscope to some of Christianity's thornier topics and people, using a progressive theological lens and a socio-historical approach to studying the Bible. So if that sounds like your jam, come on in and have a seat. But buckle up, it might get bumpy. Okay, folks, welcome back to Notes from the Other Side. This is a podcast where we take a microscope to some of Christianity's thornier topics and people. I'm your host, Tiziana Severse, and we are back in Giraffe Studios with Andy Bishop.
Hi.
And our good friend, Tom Griffin.
Hello.
Folks, if you tuned in last time, you heard our lead up to our final episode today on the Protestant reformation.
Yes.
The Protestant
The Protestant reformation.
AKA Nerd Rage.
Yeah.
Religion Edition.
Yeah, nerd.
Because nothing
Religion
follows.
edition.
You don't follow up a strongly worded letter with another strongly worded letter that's the same letter unless it's just pure nerd rage.
Pure, yeah.
Nerd rage.
As per my last email, as per my last theses that I pounded against the door.
As per my last theses. Yeah, exactly. As per my last desire to have a nasty discussion that nobody,
Yes.
into a verbal fight that nobody wants to have.
Debate me, you coward.
Cowards! So anyhow, at this point, Halloween has come and gone. But like I had said at the last episode in my house, I always celebrate Martin Luther, October 31st, and the pounding of the 95 Theses on the efficacy and on the efficacy and power of indulgences on the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg, Germany in 1517. We gave you guys a whole lead up last time to that. So if you are just hopping in, if you know anything about the history of the Catholic Church and indulgences, you can go ahead and skip it. But if you're like, wait, what? I suggest you go give that episode a listen before you hop back in because shit is about to get crazy.
And there are a lot of weird names. So
A lot of weird names.
that sound a lot alike that aren't the same.
They're not the same. All right, so keep that in mind as we're talking.
Yeah.
So he posts his theses. Unbeknownst to him, he's passing it around to some of his friends because he's like, "Look, I don't want to get in trouble here, but you guys agree with me, right?" And this printer, Charles Schurl,
Take a look at this for me. Make sure I'm
I
not.
don't speak German. SCHEURL.
Sure.
Anyway,
Yeah, Cheryl.
Chris Schurl.
Sure.
Anyways, he translates it into German and starts to print it without Luther's permission, and it went absolutely viral. People went nuts. They were like, yeah, dude, we also have a problem with the Catholic Church selling freedom from purgatory. Now, I will have it stated that his problem was not with purgatory per se, Luther.
Well, no, because
It was just the idea that the church was the dispensary of the treasury of merit instead of just it being forgiveness being what you receive freely by grace from God.
And then you have people start paying money for it, which.
Yeah, and then it becomes really slimy. And you start valuing the sale of indulgence. Like you start valuing the purchasing of the right to go look at a relic more than taking care of your fellow Christian, which is another thing that Luther, as a monk, had a hard time with. So he sends a copy of this to the Bishop Albrecht of Mainz, and he sends it to Leo the 5th, the 10th, oh my God, what are we going to fucking do? What are we going to do here? And they're like, oh, shoot.
We got to talk to
this guy, but we don't want to piss off Frederick the Wise, who was the Prince of Wittenberg at the time.
And one of the elector counts of the Holy Roman Empire.
Exactly, because he had a lot of power in Germany, and because Leo wanted money both from Germany in the sale of indulgences, but also because he was trying to fight a war. So they're like, okay, we're going to be chill about this. And we're gonna
send a couple of our friends to talk to this guy.
We're gonna send a couple of our friends to talk to this guy.
And I called them the 3 ghosts of Catholic guilt because they each get a little bit worse
as time goes on. The first one is
Sylvester Mazzolini. Was his name, Mazzolini, and he was a papal legate, and he was the first person to bring a heresy case against Martin Luther, summoning him to Rome.
Yeah,
he's like, all right, you got to talk to the Pope. And you got to come to our place to do that.
Yeah.
Frederick the Wise is like, don't do that.
Don't you dare.
Because if you go there, you're going to die.
Yeah, they're going to unlive you immediately.
Yeah, that sounded like a trap immediately.
Oh, it was
right
100% a trap.
Sounded like a trap.
Yeah.
Why don't you go somewhere where you don't have the protection of the local lord?
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So he was having to go. he had to go do some monkery duties
He went
anyway.
he went to Augsburg.
Yes,
and
he had to do some stuff.
They questioned
anyway.
him there.
Yes, and they questioned him there. But this at this point it's now like the spring of 1518 because again, remember like old Albie didn't even read the thing until November.
Yeah.
And then there's the holidays and all the traffic. Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's 1518, and at this point, Tetzel will not just shut up. Tetzel is super mad. All of his friends are super mad. And everybody is like continuing to chit chat over here. So you've got Sylvester who wants to like question Luther. And basically all they're like, look, bro, just like recant. That's fine.
Well, no, Sylvester was the scare tactic. He's like,
we're gonna be heresy.
We're bringing you on trial for heresy.
Yeah, it's gonna be
You're coming
bad.
to Rome, bud. And Fred was like, nah.
No, I'm not doing that.
You're not taking my friend.
So they convinced him to go to this diet of Augsburg, which he was going there anyway.
He was going there anyway.
To do like to do monkery.
Yes.
Monkery things. Because at this time, you got to remember,
he was illuminating some
during
manuscripts.
this time, he was a teacher at Wittenberg, but he was also still like a monk. He had like 11 little churches that he was like in charge of doing stuff. I don't know, whatever monks do.
Full
I'm not
course
Catholic.
load.
Yeah, full course load. So he's going down there anyways, so it's the Diet of Augsburg, which is where he meets the second ghost of Catholic guilt.
Yes, who is named Cajetan.
That's not an easy one.
No, Cajatan. So it's like Settlers of Catan, but almost as insidious.
Like Settlers of Catan, but not get so bad.
He's also a papal legate, and he spends days, because he's sent there by Leo X specifically. You have to make him take it back.
You have to make him take it back.
You have to make him recant.
But unfortunately for Cajetan, he was also sent there to convince the princes of Germany to support financially the fight against the Turks.
So he's already kind of
two really terrible things to do and say.
Yes. And he's given a command by Leo X. If he doesn't recant, you got to arrest him and bring him back to Rome.
Yeah, like this was. We already sent Sylvester what's-his-face.
And he wasn't able
to get him to come to Rome to do the thing.
He didn't
So
walk
now
to
we're gonna
his
send
murder.
you. Yeah.
No.
So yeah, right. So and here's the thing. So now we're gonna send you into the lion's mouth. We're gonna send you into Germany where everybody friggin' loves this guy.
And hates you.
Specifically you. And you're gonna the first thing you're gonna do is tell all these German princes you want money. And then the second thing you're gonna do is tell their homeboy that he's going to die if he doesn't recant.
If you don't say you were lying, we're going to kill you. And luckily, though, for Martin Luther, Cajetan is also kind of a bitch. Yeah. And so he doesn't.
So he's easy to not like.
Well, he doesn't arrest him. He just kind of shovels his feet the whole time. And while he's waiting to decide whether or not he wants to arrest Martin Luther, they sneak him out the back of a monastery. They dress him up like a different kind of monk. And they basically walk him out through the kitchen.
Yeah, and then it says that he had to get on this horse and ride, but he wasn't used to riding horses anymore. So by the time he got to where he was like riding, his legs were all like beaten up and like totally saddle sore. And they laughed at him because he looked like total trash.
Oh yeah,
apparently
because he wasn't used to that. He was a walking monk. So that was the first big fight, and that was in 1518.
Yes.
And so Tetzel and his friends now, and so by this time too, there's this other guy's name is Johannes Eck. And what's sad about Eck is he was actually one of Luther's friends.
Yeah, they used to be really close.
But when Johannes Eck read the 95 Theses, he took it real personal and decided that, I have to side with the Pope here. And he starts writing these things. Like he wrote something called the Obelisk, which was like also his kind of treatise against Luther.
Against
and then Luther replied with something called Asterix, which was there's all these little German plays on words involved. Everybody here involved is much smarter than me. But so while Johannes, and they're not talking to each other directly. Like this is so silly. It's like making a Facebook post.
Yeah,
you ever seen somebody make a Facebook post where like, I don't like to talk about some people, but some people just
they're
this,
arguing
that, and
in the comments.
They were vague booking the Reformation.
Yes.
Well, they're arguing in the comments.
They're arguing in the comments, yeah. For sure. And meanwhile, so while Cajetan is having this diet at Augsburg, while all this is going, because this is October of 1518 when they died of Augsburg. So now it's been a year.
Yeah.
But while they're building, everything took so freaking long.
Yeah.
Because nobody had a telephone. So you had to walk someone's ass somewhere
all
with
the way
a
to
letter.
Germany.
Yeah. And Roman back. And so while this diet is happening and they're like planning and trying to get together, and meanwhile, Maximilian is still alive. So Pope Leo doesn't have,
He will not die.
doesn't want to really piss off Frederick the Wise because he's still hoping, fingers crossed, that when Maximilian dies, Frederick will become the new emperor. So while they're trying to work all this out, meanwhile, Johannes Eck is like all pissed off and he's writing all this stuff against Luther. And meanwhile, there's this guy, you want to talk about a long friggin' name. I can't even read this guy's
Carl?
friggin' name.
Is this Milititz?
His name is, that's next. His name is Andreas Rudolf Bodenstein von Karlstadt.
Karlstadt, that's right, yeah.
So meanwhile, Karlstadt enters the chat and starts arguing in the comments too. Now, Karlstadt was a professor also at Wittenberg and was a contemporary of Luther's. So he's trying to defend Luther, but really he just doesn't really know what he's talking about, and he basically wants to get a piece.
If Luther was Bruce Springsteen, Karlstadt was John Cougar Mellencamp. Like the Kmart version of Martin Luther. The great value brand, Martin Luther. Members Mark.
The members mark.
That's
Martin Luther.
exactly
That's just great.
right.
Yeah, it's kind of the same,
And
but
like,
it's not the same.
Yeah, so while everyone's over here trying to like quietly get Luther to shut the F up, because there's also all these political overtones to the relationship between Leo and Frederick the Wise, Eck and Karlstadt are like having this like big beefy debate. And meanwhile, the whole time Eck is arguing with Karlstadt, he really doesn't give a shit. He wants to argue with Luther, but Luther's being coached to be as quiet as humanly possible.
Yes.
So the diet at Augsburg happens, okay? And that doesn't go very well.
No.
And this is when we meet the third ghost of Catholic guilt.
And the most insidious because he's a friend.
Yeah.
So his name is Karl von Milititz, which is a very fun name. And he is Saxony's papal nuncio. So basically just like a middle-level bureaucrat sort of.
Yeah, middle-level
head.
bureaucrat.
Yeah, talking head.
They're like, okay.
But he is related to Frederick the Wise. He's like his cousin. Or nephew or something.
I think it's his cousin.
They're all cousins. Everyone's related.
They're all inbred.
It's the Middle Ages.
But this is why they settle. I think, but that was the next ploy, the next tactic. We'll send somebody who's closer to
That's
Frederick
why I'm saying it's also the most insidious.
Right.
And so what Milititz tells Martin Luther is like, hey, man, you're mad. Pope Leo's mad. Albie up and Mates is mad. Let's settle this.
Can you just shut up?
If you just stop talking about it, this can all go away.
Yeah.
And then you know what else he did? He brought Freddie a golden rose. Because it's the final season of The Bachelor.
Yes, like literally.
Literally a golden rose. There are these special, like, blessed by the Pope golden roses that you could give to somebody as like a gift. And because Frederick was so obsessed with relics, there was like a gift he could not refuse. He didn't give Luther one, but he brought one. So he like came bearing this like special fancy pants golden rose. And it's his cousin. And like Luther, at the end of that conversation, Luther was genuinely torn because he didn't want to cause trouble. He just didn't want to see the people being extorted.
And he's like, you know what? Fine.
I'll shut up.
As long as everyone leaves me alone,
it'll be fine.
I'll shut up. It'll be fine.
But
however, the narrator says,
Karlstadt and Eck cannot let
they
it
will
fuck
not
go.
stop.
They won't let it go. So Karlstadt and Eck are continuing this meantime to have this big fat fight. And Luther's getting irritated because Karlstadt is like basically speaking for Luther and speaking Luther's theology, but he's not Luther.
Yeah.
And so he's getting really mad because he knows that Eck just wants to come at him, but he's coming at him with this like weird sideways way and it's pissing him off. So finally they decide that they're going to have a debate in Leipzig in June of 1519. Now, just for shits and giggles, let's remind ourselves, Leipzig was Frederick the Wise cousin, George the Bearded territory.
Yeah. Because it was one of the nice cities.
So when Frederick...
Again, not as good a name.
Not as good as the name.
But Frederick and George were cousins. Frederick had inherited the crappy version of the kingdom from his dad, and George had inherited the awesome part of the kingdom from his dad. So George already kind of thought he was better, and Frederick was already trying to like compete. So George has his school in Leipzig, and Frederick had his school in Wittenberg. And so George decides that he wants to have the debate at his school, and none of his professors want to fight with Luther.
Nope.
Like none of them want to do it. And he gets really mad. So he's like, okay, fine. So he's going to just invite Eck and this guy Karlstadt, and they're going to come and they're going to have this debate. And it's like in June. It's 3 weeks long. And when I just tell you,
it is
Wittenberg students, like the student body of Wittenberg descended on Leipzig like a bunch of drunken frat boys.
Just
They
beer and sausages.
Bunches of them all, because they all loved Luther so much. They were like, he was like a champion.
He rolled deep, yeah.
Yeah, and so like all of these people like stormed the city in at this debate.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. And so Luther and Karlstadt, they ride into Leipzig with this entire bunch of like Wittenberg bros, and then there's this cousin rivalry that's happening between Sir Duke and the Bearded and
Frederick the Wise.
Frederick the Wise. Well, the exact same day that this debate is about to start, Maximilian has died and a new emperor is chosen.
And that new emperor is Charles V.
Charles V.
The one that Pope Leo does not want.
But here's the bitch of it. Actually, Frederick the Wise was voted. But the only reason he didn't win is because he thought long and hard about his vote, and he realized that he was not in a position to run the empire in a way that was best for the people. And so he cast his vote for Charles instead. And that's the thing, like, this is one of the reasons why they call him Frederick the Wise. He was the consummate statesman. He really made the best decision that was best for the people and the empire, not what was best for him.
Not many of those.
No, yeah, he did not follow to the Peter principle.
So now Leo doesn't have to kiss Frederick's ass anymore, but Charles V kind of does.
And
because
he is
it was
pissed.
It was Charles V wouldn't have got that position if it hadn't been for Frederick.
Ha.
I know. It's crazy.
So not only is the Pope pissed,
yeah,
but Charles is also pissed at Frederick the Wise for basically make him look like a chump. It's like, oh, you're the emperor, but you're not the one everyone wanted.
Yeah, you're not. But here we are, right? Like, here we are. So they have this debate in Leipzig, and like really, it's kind of like crappy because he's fighting Karlstadt for the most part, and it's not until like the end of the debate that Luther finally like gets up there, and he's like, "Oh my God, okay, fine, I'm so sick of it." But here's the big part. Here's the most important part.
The mic drop moment.
During the mic drop friggin' moment. At this time, all we're really debating is indulgences. Well, that's what started it. And it turned into this theology of grace versus works. It turned into the power of the papacy and whether or not the papacy or a council could err. Because that was it. Tetzel literally said,
and Act 2, yeah, they were.
The Pope cannot err. To say that he can or has is to be a heretic.
Oh,
the
wow.
Bible, and Tetzel said literally, the Bible be damned. The Pope and a council cannot err.
The Pope is the only person who can interpret Scripture.
Yeah, that's it. And Luther was like, you know what? I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think that's probably correct. I think that because he couldn't find it in the Scripture. He couldn't find it in the Scripture. Now, Jesus gave the keys to Peter and said, "On this rock I will build my church." And so what the Catholic Church had interpreted that as was, yes, we are now Peter was the first Pope, and that the keys of the kingdom have been given to the Pope. And so the Pope is responsible for, and is basically as Christ on the church, to the church now, because we're the living representation of Christ. Yeah. And so the Pope cannot err and the council cannot make any mistakes. That's it, period. Well, in the beginning, when Constantine was in charge and was like, doing like the Council of Nicaea and like all these other different councils and things, they voted on things.
Divinity of Jesus.
Pretty much everybody agreed that Constantine was doing things the right way, right? And that if Constantine had said, like, there might be some quabbles,
but if it ain't
later
broke
on down the line, but like for the most part, if Constantine did it, it was probably correct.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the papal bulls that had established the Pope's inerrancy was called the Council of Constance, and it was an article that defined the papal inerrancy and the Pope's ability to interpret Scripture. And so that was one of the things that Tetzel's pissed off about, because he's like, no, there's been a papal bull. The Pope's inerrant. The Pope's inerrant. As Luther was preparing for this debate in March, he discovered that the Council of Constance was a 4th century forgery.
Yep.
It wasn't real.
So everything, this whole house of cards was based on a lie, essentially.
Wow.
Yeah. And come to find out, lots of people had known that, but it had been swept under the rug because it did not serve power.
Right, because it didn't serve
so
power.
Luther figures this out. And he's not saying it. And finally, at the end of this debate,
He's
just
so
like
frustrated.
says it.
Nerd rage, man. It's a powerful
I'm going to see if I
force.
can find it.
I think I might.
Okay. So in a letter to Spalatin, Luther recounted this part of the debate. And this is from my Eric Metaxas book. At length, there was even a debate over the authority of a council. I openly confessed that councils have faithlessly damned some articles that have been taught by Paul, Augustine, and even Christ himself in so many words. This truly enraged the snake.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, Ed was so pissed that he would dare say something like that, that some councils have faithlessly damned some articles that have been taught by Paul, Augustine, and Christ
himself.
Nevertheless, I proved from the very words of the Council of Constance itself that not all the condemned articles were heretical and in error. When Luther said that the Council of Constance had among with them heretical articles, condemned some articles that were pious and Christian, Duke George had enough. Arms akimbo, he shook his bearded head and harumphed a plague on it.
Yeah.
Luther was indeed treading precisely where Huss, who had been burned at the stake, had trod a century earlier. So we might ask ourselves, why should this end be different?
Popularity.
So, yeah. So he just like come right out and fucking said it. The church can err. A council can be wrong. The Pope can make a mistake. And that was the end of that.
Yeah, and that for that era, that's saying the quiet part out loud. Like there's no coming back from that. That is heresy.
That is heresy. So that is in. So this is in this is at the council. This is at the debate at Leipzig. So this is in 1520. The papal bull Exsurge Domine is issued, which gives Luther 60 days to appear in Rome. And Luther's like, I'm not going to do that.
I'm not going to do that.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to Rome. You're insane. So in 1521, Luther is officially excommunicated. And what happens is, what sucks is that they send, I don't know if it's Cajetan they send again.
No,
so
it was.
Basically, so they send Cajetan again. So essentially, so the papal bull Exsurge Domine, it's basically, that's the summoning. Mm-hmm. So he had to, but again, nobody had a telephone. So his ass had to get in a wagon and go all over Germany and post this thing everywhere that he went.
Hoping
and everywhere that he went,
Luther will see it.
Oh, wow.
And everywhere that he went,
him.
they burned all of his works up and burned everything to bits and pieces. And it was this whole huge thing. And that was a big part of it. It was like the burning of Luther's works in real time.
Oh, yeah.
And so nobody, see, that's the thing is nobody in Germany likes him. Everyone in Germany is on Luther's side. At this point.
Yeah. So
everybody's on Luther's side. They're all really into it. And so.
And they're doing a literal book burning campaign.
Yeah, they're doing a literal book burning.
Probably does not look good
Is it
at all.
Cajetan that makes him do it the second time?
Yes.
I think it is. I can't remember. But yeah, so he's going to do all these things.
He's handpicking all these works by Martin Luther
and burning them up.
These are all heretical.
So in 60 days when he doesn't get excommunicated, he's officially excommunicated, and Luther publicly burns the bull excommunicating him in Wittenberg.
In public.
He essentially takes the Pope's words and wipes his ass with it.
And then sets it on fire. Yeah.
And the Pope's like, this will not do.
Yes.
He's over. It sounds like Martin Luther is just over it. He's just like.
He's just over it.
He's just an angry dude who just wants to read.
And he just wants to read
and be a good. He still, even when excommunicated, he considers himself a devout and devoted Catholic.
He was. But the thing about it is that
and this is what changed him.
the thing is, I think that for Luther, he had a love for the scripture. And he had a love for debate with the scripture as the basis of it. And as he began to realize, like you said, that house of cards, as realizing that some of these councils were in error of the scriptures, and so were therefore heretical in themselves, his faith in the Catholic Church as an entity that represented God was what got shaken.
I would say even more, just completely shattered. Because it's if this that has been a founding tenet of the church is false, what else is
bullshit?
What else have we missed?
What else is bullshit? And that's the thing. And so he got to this place where he just didn't. And the more and more brave he got, the fewer fucks he gave. The more confident he became that like the people needed to be set free to have their own relationships with God. Like the more he didn't care anymore. The more he truly began to see the
That's
church.
what it sounds like. It sounds like at first he's being cautious. And
but he started
slowly, but
I think he started to truly see the Pope as the devil.
Yeah,
he started to truly see the papacy as the Antichrist.
And once you're excommunicated, I mean, what else can they do to you?
What else can they do to you? They really can't do anything. Like that's
it's not
the
like
end
they're
of
going to
it.
send inquisitors to Germany, where right now you are deeply unpopular.
Yeah.
You think people aren't going to hide him?
So he's got to go somewhere, and he doesn't want to go to Rome.
Does not want to go to Rome.
And
seems like it would be a bad move.
It would be a bad
move.
Not a good,
but
not
now
a
he's
good
been excommunicated. So then he's ordered to appear in April of 1521 at the Diet of Worms.
Worms.
Now, this was already happening. So everybody was already going to get together and like figure out the nuts and bolts.
This was already on the calendar.
Yeah, it was already on the calendar. And Charles V was already going to be there. And so I think, and again, like, honestly, Leo was still too scared to force anything.
Yeah.
Because his relationship with Germany was still so tenuous.
And that's right there on the border with the Ottoman Empire at that point.
Yeah. And so they have this Diet of Worms. And at this diet is already like all the archbishops and everybody in their like pomp and their finery. And everybody's already going to get there. And they're already have like a docket of shit that they're going to do to like discuss and figure out about the kingdom and how it's going to get run. And what's interesting, and this is a fun fact, this diet is the first time that Frederick the Wise and Luther ever set eyes on each other. Because prior to this, every ounce of their interaction with each other had been mitigated by this other guy who was one of Luther's friends and who was like Frederick the Wise's, I can find his name. He was Frederick the Wise's like artist in like what's what I'm looking for? He was like the artist.
Resident?
Artist in residence.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was his name? Spalatin.
Another fun name.
Yeah, another one. Yeah, Spalatin. So all the communications that Luther had with Frederick at this point had been through Spalatin.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was the first time that Frederick and that Freddie and Luther ever saw each other.
And Martin is stoked.
Yeah, he was stoked. And that's what's so funny. So
Marty and Freddie together
Marty
last.
and Freddie. Reunited and it feels so good. Yeah. So
and Fred's over there.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, so he really did. He walks into this council, and it's a big, huge deal. Like, there's a bunch of people there. It's a big, huge thing. Like, I think they said something like it's a town of 7,000 people, but it was like doubled in size for the sake of the diet because there's just so many people in town because it's a big deal. And Luther was just like a monk. He wasn't.
He's just some guy.
He was just some guy, right?
He's not
he's not even a monk anymore.
Yeah.
He got excommunicated.
He got excommunicated. He's not even a monk. He's like a teacher, you know?
Yeah.
So he'd never been to anything like this. And he walked in the door and it says that he like saw a friend of his and he was just like, oh, hey man, what's up? And they were all like, cut, no. Like he just immediately like made him like clear that he doesn't know what he's doing. And so the first day he kind of embarrassed himself. But so they're doing all this other stuff. And then all they want to do is they want to get Luther up there. And they're like, look, bro, we have 2 questions for you.
2 things.
Number 1, did you write all this shit? And then they like listed everything that he'd ever written. And then they were like, number 2,
do you believe it?
Yeah. Do you believe it? Or were you a can? And Luther was like,
I wrote it.
I did. But can I think about it?
About whether or not I believe it still.
I got to think about it.
Yeah.
And they were so mad. But he was like, I don't know. I need to think about it. So they like sent him over the day.
Everything down.
And the thing is that what they were worried about was that he was going to go home and write something because he was obviously his writing is what got this whole thing started.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they were
He's
worried
not
he was going
good
to
in
go home and
public.
like write another fucking pamphlet or something. But he just like wanted to. I don't know why. I don't know why he did that, but he did. He was just like, "No, I'm not ready. I'm not ready," because he knew he was going to get in trouble.
Stalling. Yeah.
The consequences were so great.
Right.
So he came back the next day and like he was supposed to finish his conversation at 4, but like again, they had shit to do. They were doing shit, and so they waited until like 6 o'clock. And I remember I was reading this book and they were saying like, by now everybody's like tired.
And
they have to like
hungry
light the torches on the walls and everything. So they get him up there like, all right, Luther, did you write this shit or not? And he was like, I did write some stuff. And the stuff that I wrote falls into 3 categories. The first category
Not even a straight
is
answer.
stuff that even the Pope has said is useful for Christian instruction. Didn't I write some of that? I sure did. And the second thing that I wrote was about, the church and the history of the church. And some of the stuff that I wrote called the Pope an asshole. Yeah. But if you can show me in scripture where I'm wrong, I will recant.
Nice. Yeah, see, he took it overnight to develop that.
To
develop that argument, yeah.
develop that.
So he literally beat the first kind of debate bro who came at him sideways with just rhetoric.
Yeah.
And tried to trap him and didn't realize that his opponent had done homework.
Yeah. So, and I can't remember who the name of the guy is that was questioning him.
It was Eck.
Was it Eck?
It was Eck.
At the Diet of Worms?
At the Diet of Worms, I'm pretty sure.
I have to remember it. Andy, just cut where we're all sitting here looking at our notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was that was questioning him. But anyway, but when that happened, finally, that was finally when Charles V was like, that's a fucking enough. I've heard enough of you.
Yeah, Johann van Eck. He's the guy who was questioning him.
It was Eck.
Yeah.
At
his old friend, yep.
Oh, man. His old friend
Twice
turned
got the mic
enemy.
dropped on him.
Yeah.
By
Isn't
Luther.
that crazy? Golly.
He just couldn't let it go. That's the thing.
Yeah.
He couldn't let it go.
The entire story of this movement is because the Catholic Church just could not let it go.
They couldn't let it go.
And they just kept, you got to take it back, man.
They got
We can't have
butthurt.
this on record. Yeah, exactly.
They got butthurt. And then they were like, no, this needs to be a thing.
Yeah. So, but this is the crazy part. So they have this Diet of Worms. He says this thing, and it really irritates the shit out of the emperor. Because you got to remember.
Everyone, but yes.
Well, but Charles V was the grandson of Isabel and Ferdinand of Spanish Inquisition fame. So
and the Reconquista. They were the ones who kicked all the Moors out of Spain, too.
Yeah. So he was like a real fundamentalist.
Oh,
so he had a hard time with this. So he kicks him out. But here's the thing. So that night in the city of Worms appeared all over town these tiny placards that had a workman's shoe on it. That shoe was in contrast to like the high boots that the aristocracy would wear and had become a symbol of the working people. So Luther is condemned. He's condemned by the archbishop who's like, you're a heretic, get out of my face. And then that night,
Which is a
all the
death
working
sentence.
people of Rome, put these placards all over town.
Of Worms.
To suggest you don't know who you're fucking with. Y'all, the aristocracy might have condemned this man, but those placards were posted all over by way of showing support for Luther and for how much they believed.
And long
in his
story short,
message.
he was not burned at the stake.
And long story short, he was not burned at the stake. Yeah, long story
Funny how
short.
that works.
Good to have a couple, maybe couple thousand friends.
Although at that point, because this is in April, and in May, Frederick arranges for Luther to be kidnapped and taken to exile at Wartburg Castle.
Where he lives out pretty much the rest of his days.
But like up there,
Frederick, his friend, is like, we're just gonna
snatch you up and put you
boop,
here. Like
go.
staged a kidnapping and brought him far enough away into the middle of nowhere where nobody would bother him. But while he was there, he did the most amazing thing. He spent 11 weeks translating the New Testament into German. And in February of 1523, the first
mundane language Bible.
Wow.
is printed.
That's cool. I didn't know that was Martin Luther.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Which then led, I forget what it's called, the first one in English. It's like the Devon Bible or something like that, Devon, but I'm not exact. I don't remember. But that was a direct translation of the German one.
Okay. I thought I started with a T. The Tyndale Bible.
Tyndale Bible.
The
there you
Tyndale
are.
Bible.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. So the Tyndale Bible is a direct translation from Luther's German.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which gave Henry VIII ideas about Catherine of Aragon, also Charles V's daughter.
Oh, see, now you're going, keep going.
So it all becomes enmeshed.
Yeah, it all becomes enmeshed pretty quickly.
It's all, by the end of it, when the Church of England becomes a thing, it becomes more of a thing because Catherine of Aragon
there's more
Aragon
to the
is
history.
related to Charles V.
Right. So there's more to the history at that point, but it's like, this is I think that Diet of Worms the refusal of Martin Luther to actually be burned at the stake like he's supposed to be.
Exactly. He's like,
I think
no.
that is like the bottom line. It's like Martin Luther just fucking refused to be burned at the stake like he was supposed to be. Right. But he happened to have not just the backing of a prince of Germany, but of all of these people. Everybody loves him. He had already convinced everybody in Wittenberg of his theology. And he spoke to, and like you said, like the book even said, you know, it's the same thing that 100 years earlier, people had been burned at the stake for.
Yep, Jan Hus.
Luther wasn't the first person to say it. He was just the first person to say it with enough protection that he didn't get died.
Yeah, and also he had the correct words to say that weren't inflammatory enough that he would immediately be burned at the stake.
Right. Yeah. And so that was basically it. He ended up like...
And maybe those 100-year-old claims had that door pried open for long enough that, you know, the second time you hear something shocking, and I don't mean the elite, I mean the common people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The second time you hear something shocking, it's not
that shocking.
So shocking.
I do want to talk about the swan because I think it's very funny.
Oh, yeah, tell that. I think that's great, too.
I think it's very funny. So we've been talking a lot about Jan Hus, and he was Czech, and he was the first one of these really vocal opponents of the Catholic Church, but this was 100 years prior, so this was around 1413 is when he was executed. And he said, and his nickname was the Gray Goose. I think he was Czech or Hungarian. I'm pretty sure he was Czech, but he might have been Hungarian.
I'll look it up.
Yes. Hus. It's called the Gray Goose. And what he said is what the church is now doing is cooking a gray goose, but 100 years from now, they will be hearing the cry of a beautiful swan.
Ha.
So, Martin Luther did not particularly like Jan Hus.
He was Czech.
Oh, good. I was right.
You were right.
Good. He did not like Jan Hus because he was a
heretic.
He was a heretic, and Martin Luther was a devout Catholic.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is, though, he nailed his theses to the door exactly 103 years later, after 103 years after John Hus said that.
So it was like a
almost
prophecy.
to the day.
It was like a prophecy.
So he was seen as some sort of
like
prophetical figure.
Yeah.
And he hated that because it drew more attention to him. And that's why if you see a Lutheran church, a lot of times their wind vanes are fucking swans. And a lot of times you see Martin Luther like depictions
carrying
of him
a swan,
holding swans,
yeah.
and he would have hated it.
That's funny.
More than anything else.
That's another sort of like
folk hero sort of thing.
There's a folk hero thing, but there's also like that's another sort of crack in the door. It kind of like adds legitimacy.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's all just amazing about like timing. Those poor bastards had to like sacrifice their lives to like lay the foundation for somebody like Luther to come along.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, the Hussites were a faction within monkery. There were people that even though Jan Hus was burned as a heretic, there were still people that carried his work. And actually, the first time that somebody gave Luther a book of his, he like threw it away. He was like, I don't want to read. I'm like, this guy's a heretic. But then he read it and he's like, oh, actually, I really agree a lot with this guy. Right. And so like, that was why calling him a Hussite and like saying you sound like Jan Hus. That was like an expletive. It was like what's the word? It was derisive.
It was a slur for him.
It was a slur. But at the same time, Hus had made this prediction that in 100 years from now, just so happened to be almost exactly 100 years that Luther resurrected, and perfected Huss's theology in order to set the people free.
And just this angry old man having to live with his folk hero status and hating it.
I know.
This is just like...
Well, but I mean, so like, just go back to the timeline. So this in 1921 in May. So Frederick's totally condemned as a heretic and an outlaw after the Diet of Worms.
Yep.
They're like, that's it. You fucking said it. You fucking said it with your mouth.
Martin Luther said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah,
and you can't take it back.
That was an inside thought, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, that is not.
And he done did it. So that's when Frederick arranges him for be kidnapped, and he goes to Wartburg Castle.
Wartburg?
Yeah, Wartburg.
Nice.
Yeah, Wartburg
Sounds
Castle.
like a good place.
Yeah, where he remains incognito. And then he translates the New Testament into German in 11 weeks. And then actually says in March, he returned to Wittenberg and preached his 8 Invocavit sermons. Oh, I didn't read those. Oh, shit. I hate that.
Yeah.
There apparently was a piece of my own research that I did not do.
Well, he also did his sermon on the early Christmas services, where he starts to reference his more anti-church as an establishment sort of
and
ideas.
he has these table talk conversations because he winds up getting married. You know, I love that he got to get married.
Yeah.
Really?
He's not a priest anymore. What?
Yeah, I didn't. Okay.
Yeah, he's been excommunicated. It doesn't fucking matter. So he got married and he had like a bunch of kids. 2 of them died. It was really sad. But he ended up like, what was it? Table conversations. He wrote books about it where he would have these like late night, you know,
family discussions.
And he would have all the students come over to his house, you know, they'd all sit around and talk, and the people would sit down and write down everything that he said. And they published these books later. He was a prolific writer. He wrote so much over the course of his life. And by the time he died, he was much more like uncouth and straightforward by the time that he died.
Yeah, because he didn't have any more fuck. He was out of fuck.
He gave his very last fucks.
Back in the 20s. Yeah. I gave him back
that
in
was my
15,
last, 1521 was the last fuck I had. Yeah. And so he ended up just getting married, and he finally died in
43?
46.
Yeah. Oh, 46.
Yeah, he died in 1546. He preaches his last sermon on February 14th or 15th, and then he died in February and was buried at Wittenberg. You know what else I thought was a neat little fact is that Martin Luther King Jr. or Martin Luther King was named Michael King. And he went on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, and after learning about Martin Luther, changed his name to Martin Luther King. He was Michael.
I didn't know that.
And so Martin Luther King Jr.
I was wondering if there was a correlation.
Yeah, so that was so in 1934. Yeah, after his pilgrimage, while in Germany, this man whose name was Michael King became so impressed with what he learned about the reformer Martin Luther that he decided to do something dramatic. He offered the ultimate tribute to the man's memory by changing his own name to Martin Luther King. His 5-year-old son was also named Michael, and to his son's dying day, his closest relatives would call him Mike. But not long after the boy's father changed his own name, he decided to change his son's name too, and Michael King Jr. became known to the world as Martin Luther King Jr.
Wow.
That's
really interesting.
Isn't that cool? And of
Well,
course,
that is a wild story. Lord, I only knew the guy that started the treatises, et cetera, that basic fact.
And I think, and that's something that you and I, Tom, were talking about is like the idea that most people think that he just pounded those theses on the door and that was the beginning of it.
And that was everything,
But it wasn't. There was a long period of like 4 years. But and originally his big beef was the extortion of money from the people instead of the free gift of grace.
Right.
And the people were like, I also hate that.
I don't like giving money.
Yeah. Well, and I don't like that feeling my attachment
I don't like feeling
salvation.
like a rube. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like what Martin Luther preached and the thing is, I think even now to this day, the Catholic Church has come around to some of his teachings and has agreed.
Vatican II changed a lot of that back in the 70s.
Yeah.
But
not till the 70s though, huh?
Yeah, not until 1972 or 1973 is when I think it's hilarious they called it Vatican II.
He wasn't totally wrong about all of it.
But yeah, and even until his death, it really was until John Calvin. The divinity of Mary was still very much a thing. So for early Lutheranism and all that stuff, he still believed in the divinity of the Virgin Mary and how you kind of have to go through her to talk to Jesus.
Yeah, a lot of people, and that was one of the things we talked about too, being like in terms of Christology is concerned. Now, just for everybody listening, John Calvin, I Googled it, 1509 to 1564. So definitely a contemporary of Luther, but lived slightly longer, kind of carried his work on. And so it was him and this other guy, Metataxis or it's Metatron is what I always want to say. That's not his name. But like this other young kid that was also super smart. Like all three of them kind of got together and basically created like a new theology and began the Protestant Reformation. But that was also why then you started having all these crazy wars, because if a ruler was Catholic, then they killed all the Protestants. And then if a ruler was a Protestant, they killed all the Catholics. And it was this whole big ugly mess, which is theoretically why we're supposed to have the separation of church and state. Here in the United States.
Can't have everything.
You can't have everything.
Apparently we can't have nice things either.
You can't have much.
Yeah, can't have much. Not even healthcare.
You're asking for a little bit much.
I know. comprehensive healthcare. What the fuck's wrong with you? But why did I chase that rabbit with John Calvin? What were we talking about?
Well, we were just talking about like how he was still nominally Catholic to the point where he recognized the divinity.
Well, the Christology. So like at this point too, like during during Luther's, period of monkery, they were still in this belief system that like God and Jesus were essentially just exacerbated by humankind at all times.
Yeah.
That like even having to deal with humanity was such a
frustration.
A frustration that like you prayed to the saints and to Mother Mary because they had at least been human and can somewhat understand your process of being human, which is literally the opposite of Jesus's message.
Yeah, and
I think a big consequence of having of a high Christology, like the more
that makes sense.
The more God you made Jesus, the more difficult you made it to get to him, and you made it more possible for the Catholic Church to be in charge of shit like this.
And that's the Council of Nicaea. They literally took a majority vote as to whether Jesus was God's son, but also a man, or Jesus was God on earth.
Yeah.
And they voted that he was a divine being and it wasn't a very large majority.
No, it wasn't.
No, it's close. That makes sense.
It really wasn't. You're talking about
like
the Arian controversy.
Yeah.
And actually most people would have sided with Arian. He had the predominant view, but people were kind of like afraid to stand up for it. And so there's just all these little weird consequences of Constantine's imperialization of the church and his desire to homogenize and streamline the belief system and theology so that there was because you can't have you have to have a unified religion if you're going to use it as a power.
Especially if you want it to be a state religion.
I'm telling you. Yeah.
And like, I still think, and this is just my personal opinion, but, for the longest time in the Roman Empire, the emperor was considered a divine being as well.
Absolutely.
And so I think there was still a little bit of flavor of that in Constantine because he was a pagan originally.
Well, he stayed pagan. He didn't get baptized until his deathbed.
Until his deathbed.
So in the Roman belief system, your emperor was like the highest pagan priest.
Yep.
And he continued throughout the course of his life.
Yep.
Yeah, he continued throughout the course. Constantine continued throughout the course of his life to participate in pagan festivals and to be that pagan leader. He never chose a side. Until he died. Until the day he died, he finally got baptized as a Christian, like on his deathbed. But consummate politician, right?
Said
like
he had that vision
both
on the
sides
eve
just
of a
in
battle
case.
in hoc signo vinces.
Well, he's not going to give up that other power.
Yeah, Christianity was part of the power. So that was what what made the Roman belief system so unique, because they didn't, when you got absorbed into like the Roman Empire, they didn't make you off your religious beliefs. They just kind of incorporated it into what they already believed. As long as it wasn't in conflict.
As long as those taxes kept rolling in.
And as long as you honored the emperor as God, then like we're probably chill.
You're good.
Matter of fact, pray to your God for the Romans. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. We'll take all the help we can get.
We'll add you to the list.
You see
and that
those
was
goths?
the only
They're
reason
scary.
that was the only reason why the Jesus movement and the Christians were so problematic, because they were like, no, we're not going to worship the emperor.
Yeah,
and because he's just a fucking dude. And that was where that's where they.
And I think that was a big part of it, because they were facing a lot more external pressure from like the Visigoths and everyone coming from the east. And so they're like, we can't fight amongst ourselves as well. And it's just easier to be like, great.
Fine,
cool. You can love Jesus if you want, but
it's good.
Can we all fight these German guys?
Yeah. Can we all agree the bad guys are over there?
Yeah. They're the ones with the horns on their helmets.
But that's the thing, like throughout the course of Christianity, and I find to this day that a lot of times, people homogenize Christianity.
Mm-hmm, they do.
But throughout the course of the history of Christianity, there have always been voices that fought against the imperialization of their religious practice.
Yeah.
And Jesus was the first voice that
I would
fought
100%
against the
agree,
imperialization of his spiritual practice. He was the first person to argue, like, you've got to stop turning the Torah and the works of the law into a yoke and a burden that you yourselves would not lift a finger to carry. That's what he said. You laden the people down with a burden that you yourself would not lift a finger to carry. And you spend so much time worrying about the outside of the cup that you've ignored the weightier matters of truth and justice that's inside. The cup is filthy on the inside. So Jesus was the first person to do that. And it's just been the job of Christians throughout the course of time to kind of
ruin that?
Well, no, as the empire controls Christianity and uses that as a tool, it's been the voice of Christians like Martin Luther. I went to my first Catholic Mass.
Really? How was that?
It was awesome. It was in a field underneath a tent at a festival that I was at
What?
this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the
What sort of
priest,
festival?
Yeah, I went to it's called Wild Goose. I went to this, it's like a progressive Christian meeting
say-
of the minds.
Yeah.
Like,
Is
Theme there.
that a Jan Hus
yeah.
reference?
No, maybe it is. Oh, it very well might be. Holy shit. I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
it
but
might
you
be.
were like outside in a tent. So
Yeah, so
why?
it was
Having
like
a Catholic
Wild Goose.
mass, which is like
Yeah. And it was
bananas to
Sunday.
me.
Yeah, exactly. But it was Sunday. And
But
so
that's why it's wild goose.
Maybe.
It's
Get
outdoors.
it? Get it? Yeah, this was in August because I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing with my master's. And so I had gone there to like talk to different theological seminaries because I'm like 2/3 of my way done with my Master of Divinity and I don't want to finish it
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, fair.
because it sucks.
It sucks.
Well, I have 2 kids now. I just don't want to do it. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
also
No,
it's
reasonable.
I'm 50 credits into a 72 credit degree.
Yeah.
At this point.
And I don't want to quit, but it's like I don't want to finish it. So I don't know. Anyway. So I went there to like look and see what seminaries might be local. So I'm not traveling to Colorado because my current seminary is in Colorado. But it was the last morning there, and it's Sunday morning. It's the last morning. 'Cause it's a festival, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And Sunday is, of course, church. And so I was kind of looking around and I heard some music that I liked. And so I went and I sat under this tent and there was this like tiny little father wearing jeans and the little black shirt with the little collar. And he had these glasses and he was from Jersey and he had an accent and he just delivered mass and he was just had his hands in his pockets and he was saying, well, if you've never been to mass before, we're going to do a lot of standing up and a lot of sitting down and a lot of crossing ourselves and you can follow along if you want to. And then like at the end of the service, he was like, asked questions of everybody and asked everybody to just engage in conversation and how they thought about things and how they felt about things. And he let the periods of silence between speakers be just long enough to get uncomfortable. But he didn't want anybody to feel like they didn't have a chance to speak.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he said, okay, well, now we're going to do communion. And he said, and I know that for many of you, you've been told that if you're not a Catholic, you can't do communion. But, it's my belief that communion happens somewhere between here, and he touched his forehead, and here, and he touched his heart. And he said, so if you want to take the communion, then I suppose that's between you and God. And then he just
wow.
offered communion to everybody. And it was like the most mind-blowing, beautiful thing. And in that moment, standing in that man's presence, I felt like I was standing in the presence of the lineage of Martin Luther. I felt like I was standing in the presence of the lineage of monks and priests and pastors who have like worked tirelessly and quietly behind the scenes to make people feel loved and seen and known. Yes, that man was a Catholic priest. I promise you he would never hurt a soul. And it's like the narrative of what a Catholic is, the narrative of what the priest is, the narrative of what Catholicism is, the narrative of what fundamentalist Christianity has become.
Yeah.
I think we forget that throughout the course of time, there has been a small, thin vein of people like Martin Luther.
Yeah, and it's a lot harder to see these days, especially, and I do think that this neo-Calvinist kind of American Protestant Christianity thing that this, the word's escaping me, evangelical sort of is really harmful. Not only to just society as a whole, because right now it informs all of our policy.
Which is a big piece.
Whether we say it does or doesn't is
right. Well, I mean, I think our current policymakers are being very clear.
Yeah, exactly.
that their evangelical
subtle.
Christianity is informing their policy making.
They're being very.
But it's that whole thing that the Bible says. No, that's how you've interpreted it.
Yes.
And so that's why we do this show. Honestly, that's why I do this show, is because there's life after evangelicalism, and you can walk away from evangelicalism and still keep your faith.
Yeah, and I mean, I think honestly, it's damaging to the Christ message in general too.
Agreed. Yeah.
I mean,
it would be completely unrecognizable, I think.
Yeah.
That the way they talk about. You've heard people talk about how, like, what is the thing that was said about empathy? How?
That weaponized empathy or something like that. Like
empathy
that.
is a weakness of society. Empathy is a weakness of society.
Empathy is the weakness of society. I think It was either that or something that meant exactly that.
Yes,
that might be
that's
worded.
That's the marrow of the quote. But I know the quote you were making and who quoted it. But I like to keep my job, so I'm not going to mention his name. He was great. I loved his uppercase gums and lowercase teeth.
But that is not a thought of a single person. Like a single person said that quote, but that is a thing that is spread amongst those groups.
Yeah.
Not all of them, obviously. That's never true.
There's no hate like Christian love sometimes.
Oh my gosh, that's true. Well, the thing is, and I was talking to somebody else the other day, there is a certain, like, being a 90s evangelical Christian was the most Christian you could be.
No.
And so what you're dealing with is a whole generation of people who were raised in that 90s evangelical purity culture business, which I was. And I understand how your mind is enculturated at that point and in that belief system. And all of those kids have now grown up and they're now in charge and they're now in control. And it's just kind of a real mess. And they're but there's a lot of really good people out there. Brian Recker, Monty Mader. Like Dan McClellan. There's a lot of really good scholars out there that are pushing back against that and are calling it to task.
The one you turned me on to with the Instagram and TikTok videos.
That's got to be
That's probably Dan McClellan.
Yeah.
Probably.
All right, let's see it.
Yeah.
And you know
Dan's
what's great? The man's a devout Mormon.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I have another friend that I'm gonna get on one of my little TikTok buds who's a psychologist and psychiatrist. His name's Richard Wadsworth. He's also devout Mormon. I'm kind of at this point now where it's like, I'm not going to call anybody's belief systems wacky anymore. Like, I'm not going to tell anybody that they're wacky. I'm going to judge you by your fruit. And if you're a good person and you have a good heart and you're like reasonably curious and critical of your own spiritual practice, like, we're cool.
Yeah.
We can get along.
I think to me, wacky is bad fruit. Really.
Yeah. But
I mean, that is how you determine wacky.
by calling somebody a person that calls people wacky?
No, by their production of bad fruit.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That is my definition of wacky.
Yeah. But if like some
it's like, are you doing? Is it doing bad things to you or the people around you, or is it influencing?
Yes.
That's kind of
bad
my
fruit.
That's kind of my definition of wacky.
Right? Exactly. But your religion can do that and be exactly like, you can believe exactly the things I do, but you know what I mean? Like, you have twisted it just to the point. So yeah, so I'm not into this camp anymore where I'm like, oh, well, they're a Mormon. Oh, well, they're a Jehovah's Witness. Oh, well, they're Seventh-day Adventist. I'm not going to do that anymore.
It doesn't seem to matter because people are just kind of people. Like that base layer of religiosity or non or what sect doesn't seem to make somebody good or bad or nice or mean. It really just doesn't seem to matter much.
Yeah. And so I love that Dan has been so vocal about his belief that it's clear that the Book of Mormon is a 19th century literary creation, but he's also still a devout Mormon.
Yeah.
Because I think because it's complicated.
It is complicated.
And it's okay. And I love that.
Yeah, whatever helps.
Yeah.
One thing I will say about the Lutheran Church, and some of the best church music came out of Germany at that point. Like, some of the best hymns are the early.
Oh,
like
really?
Some of the ones that Martin Luther wrote himself. Like.
Oh yeah. Well, he taught on the Psalms for like ever, and he would read through all of the Psalms in like a 2-3 week period or something like that, and sing them all over and over. It was like a big part of his life. Was the Psalms. So makes sense to me. Anyways, well, y'all, this is a great episode.
Yeah, it was fun.
This was a lot of fun. I hope you feel very informed now as a listener about the Protestant Reformation and all that it entailed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
that was very informative. It really was. And fascinating. What a fascinating one.
Old Jay Tetzel and his
crazy
Tetsies.
Old Tetzel and his Tetsies. Old Tesler and his Tetsies. Old, what is his name?
Jay Tetz.
Mittitzel.
Milititz. Carl von Milititz.
Carl von Milititz. Yeah, there's so many.
Milititz.
There's just so much intrigue. And like, you know what I mean? There's just so much there's so much stuff. It's so rich. It's a rich
subtle,
story.
Contained Germanic rage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyways, all right, folks. Well, we appreciate y'all listening into this episode. And of course, always feel free to reach out. You can check out the Patreon for more information. We're going to post the notes to this particular show there. So you can take a look at everything we read. You can go look at all the websites that we looked at to gather information. Again, don't take our word for it, but research it for yourself. And we will catch you folks next time on Notes from the Other Side. Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye.
Folks, if you're enjoying this episode, you might really enjoy some of the benefits that come with being a Patreon subscriber. Over at patreon.com, we have different levels of membership, and starting for as low as $2 a month, you'll get access to things like all of the notes that I use to make these episodes, bits of script that didn't make it into the show, and even bibliographies about the books that I read to get where I'm going. Through Patreon, you even have access to some of the video that we take for the show. So some of those interviews that you like so well, you'll get to watch them in real time. So once again, head over to patreon.com/NFTOS, as in notes from the other side. That's patreon.com/NFTOS for more information about becoming a Patreon subscriber to this show. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.